What if airbenders could turn invisible, create powerful thunderstorms, or even make large vacuums, rendering aircraft, vehicles, and firebending completely useless? I mean, think about it. The other bending arts certainly have their share of alternate styles. Firebenders bend lightning, waterbenders can blood bend, earthbenders have metal bending, and lava bending, and sand bending, and lie detecting, and these Spider-Man-like ability. Yeah, there's a lot of alternate forms of earthbending. But throughout the series, there are so few airbenders that we never get to see what else they can really do. So here are a couple theoretical applications of airbending. Number 1, light bending. Now I know light and air are not the same thing, but what if I told you air itself has the ability to bend light in real life? Just take a look at this desert scene.
Come on, guys, we've got to stick together.
Notice the strange distortion near the sand? You may have even seen this kind of thing in real life. What you're seeing is the light being bent by the air itself. Let me explain. Thanks to the extreme conditions in the desert, the sand grows incredibly hot, heating up the air closer to the sand and making it less dense. What you end up with is different layers of density in the air. And when light passes through those different densities, it refracts and changes its angle. Sometimes it can even cause the light to reflect, causing this effect. So what does that mean for airbenders? Well, we know waterbenders and earthbenders can control the density of their element. That's how waterbenders create ice or earthbenders lava bend. So if we assume airbenders can adjust the density of the air, could they theoretically bend light? In true airbender fashion, a technique like this can help airbenders win fights peacefully and without bringing harm.
I've always tried to solve my problems by being quick or clever, and I've only had to use violence for necessary defense. And I've certainly never used it to take a life.
Maybe they could use the refraction to disorient opponents, making it difficult to clearly see targets. And theoretically, if the airbender had a good enough understanding of light refraction, could they be precise enough to bend light around an object completely? If human sight only works when light bounces off an object and into your eye, bending light around yourself would render you completely invisible. Airbenders with an understanding of modern physics would be the perfect spies. Number 2, vacuum bending. That's right, airbenders would be really good at cleaning carpets. Just kidding. When I say vacuum, I don't mean a vacuum cleaner. No, I mean space entirely devoid of matter or air. And thanks to our good buddies here, we know that airbenders can separate air molecules and create vacuums using airbending.
You think freedom is something that you can give or take on a whim. But to your people, freedom is just as essential as air. And without it, there is no life.
What a guy, right? But we're gonna try to keep the principles of the air nomads and find peaceful ways that they might be able to use this technique to resolve conflicts.
Typical airbender tactic. Avoid and evade.
So what good would vacuums be in a fight? Well, they actually would have been useful in some larger scale battles. Take this battle against the Equalists. If the United Forces just had a couple of airbenders among them, maybe they could have disabled the planes altogether. Just create a vacuum around the planes. Without air, their wings wouldn't be able to generate lift, and they would never get off the ground. Without air, they simply can't fly. I guess that's why they're called airplanes. What about these balloons? Well, let's assume that an airbender wouldn't be able to get the hot air out of the balloon, but instead could only create a vacuum around the balloon. The balloon only functions because the cold air on the outside is denser than the hot air on the inside, causing it to rise. So if there's no air on the outside, then the air on the inside suddenly becomes heavier than its surroundings, causing it to sink. But in reality, the difference in pressure would probably cause the balloon to explode first. So yeah, I guess that one's not too peaceful. Finally, vacuums would have been infinitely useful in the 100-Year War, not just to disable machines, but to disable firebending itself.
We'll never surrender.
That's right, fire needs oxygen to exist.
What was that? That was the worst firebending I've ever seen.
In fact, fire is essentially burning air. So could airbenders theoretically be the perfect peaceful counter to firebending? Simply creating a vacuum between themselves and the firebender could prevent an attack from ever reaching them. maybe that could have been another reason Sozin wanted to take out the Airbenders?
So I wiped out the air temples.
Who knows? Number 3, weatherbending. Yeah, I know airbenders can obviously create wind, and together they can even make a sort of tornado. But what if they could also create massive rainstorms and even devastating lightning storms? Take that, firebenders.
Well, I can take it! And now I can give it back!
Oh, and this one is probably gonna break our pacifist rule. In order to understand how an airbender could create a storm, let's take a look at how storms occur naturally. Most rainstorms in the real world are created based on the behavior of the air, more specifically, weather fronts. When a cold air mass meets a warm air mass, the two don't quite get along. Since the cold air and warm air have such vastly different densities, they clash into each other. If the cold air mass is the stronger of the two, it'll form a sort of wall of denser air, which forces the less dense warm air rapidly upwards, creating storm clouds along the way. This usually results in abrupt and powerful weather conditions, including heavy rain and devastating thunderstorms.
I can't back out just because of some bad weather.
So since we established that airbenders could probably control the density of the air, could an airbender create their own cold fronts? Think about it. When the airbenders make this tornado, they are the direct source of its power, meaning the tornado can only be as strong as their airbending. If they were weak airbenders or tired airbenders, then the tornado would probably be a lot weaker. But for the lightning storm, it wouldn't matter how good their airbending skills were. As long as they were strong enough to make the initial cold front, Mother Nature would do the rest. Once the storm started, there would be no stopping it.
That's rough, buddy.
Let's imagine for a second a world where the air nomads attacked the Fire Nation instead of the other way around.
Everything changed when the air nomads attacked.
They could pummel them with constant, relentless storms, leaving a devastating path of destruction, and the Fire Nation would have almost no way of fighting back. Once the Airbenders started a storm, they wouldn't even have to stick around. The Firebenders would be completely stranded in the Fire Nation. It would be too dangerous to fly out of the storm with all the lightning, and the seas would be too rough to sail.
There is a storm coming. A big one.
Yeah, Airbenders are scary, and these are just a few of the theoretical applications to airbending. With science and a little creativity, who knows what else the air nomads could have had in their airbending arsenal.